The dog kept crying in front of the lion's cage for 3 days and nights until the zookeepers couldn't take it anymore and opened the gate. What happened next left the entire sanctuary in silence because no one expected a stray dog to make a lion shed tears. Stay until the end, because behind those cries lies a secret that touched everyone's heart. Harold Mitchell lived alone in a small wooden cabin at the edge of a quiet town in the rural South. He was 68 years old, his weathered face carved deep by time and hardship, white hair thinned by the passing years, and a stiff, uneven walk caused by old arthritis that settled into his bones on cold mornings. No wife, no children, no siblings left to speak of. Only Max, his golden retriever mix with a soft yellow coat that caught the sunlight and eyes that spoke volumes of loyalty, devotion, and unconditional love. They had been together for 6 years now. 6 years since Harold found him at the county shelter, trembling in the corner of a concrete cell, scared and uncertain. 6 years since Harold looked into those amber eyes and knew he'd found his reason to keep going. Max was the reason Harold got out of bed each morning, the reason he still smiled when the world felt heavy, the reason his little cabin felt like a home instead of just 4 walls and a roof. Every evening they'd sit on the porch together. Harold would sip his coffee while Max rested his head on Harold's knee, watching the sun dip below the pine trees. It was their ritual, their quiet moment of peace in a world that often felt too loud and too fast. One warm spring afternoon in late April, Harold decided to take Max for a walk near the Riverside Wildlife Sanctuary just outside of town. It was a place they'd passed 100 times but never actually entered. The sanctuary was known for rescuing exotic animals from illegal trades, abusive owners, and circuses that had shut down. It was peaceful there, surrounded by tall oaks and winding trails that led past various enclosures. They were strolling along the main path, Max sniffing at wildflowers and chasing butterflies, when suddenly, without any warning, Max yanked his leash so hard it nearly pulled Harold off his feet. Before Harold could react, Max bolted straight toward the enclosures, dragging the leash behind him like a ribbon in the wind. "Max! Max, stop!" Harold shouted, his voice cracking with panic as he ran after him, his arthritic knees screaming in protest. His heart pounded in his chest, fear gripping him tight. What if Max got hurt? What if he ran into traffic or fell into one of the water features? But Max didn't stop. He ran with purpose, with urgency, like he knew exactly where he was going. And then, just as suddenly as he'd started running, he stopped, right in front of the lion's cage. And he started to cry. Not bark, not growl, not whine in the way dogs do when they want attention or food. He cried, deep, guttural, heartbroken sobs that sounded almost human, like a child who had lost something precious and couldn't find the words to explain the pain. Harold caught up, breathless and confused. He knelt beside Max, placing a trembling hand on his back. "Buddy, what's wrong? What is it?" But Max wouldn't look at him. His eyes were locked on the cage, locked on something inside. Visitors began to gather. Parents pulled their children closer. A few people whispered nervously. Zookeepers appeared from different directions, radios crackling, concern etched on their faces. Max sat there trembling, whimpering, staring through the iron bars with an intensity that made Harold's chest tighten. Inside, deep in the shadows of the enclosure, lay a large lion. The animal was weak, unnaturally still, its golden mane dull and lifeless. But even from a distance, Harold could see its eyes. They were open, and they were staring right back at Max.
Recognition. Harold's mind began to race. How could that be possible? There was only one lion in that cage, and Max had never been to this sanctuary before. They'd never even walked past this section of town until today. So why was Max acting like he knew this animal? Like they shared some deep, unspoken history? And then, like a lightning bolt through fog, it hit Harold. Years ago, when he first adopted Max from the shelter, The intake coordinator had mentioned something unusual. Max hadn't come from a normal abandonment case. He'd been rescued from an illegal exotic animal trade operation that had been raided by federal agents 2 counties over. The files mentioned that Max, who was just a puppy at the time, had been locked in a cramped trailer with several other animals. Most were wild. Most were terrified. And one of them, according to the report, was a lion cub. Harold's hands began to tremble. His throat went dry. Could it be? Was this lion, this massive, broken creature lying in the shadows, the same cub that Max had huddled with in that dark trailer all those years ago? He turned to the staff, his voice barely above a whisper. "If he won't walk away, then let him in, please. I'll take full responsibility." The zookeepers exchanged uncertain glances. One of them shook his head. Another pulled out a radio and spoke in hushed, urgent tones. After what felt like an eternity, the sanctuary director arrived, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She studied Max carefully. Then she looked at Harold. "This is highly irregular. If something goes wrong, I understand. But I think they know each other. I think they need this." The director was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Under strict supervision, and if the lion shows any sign of aggression, we intervene immediately." They opened the gate. The sound of the metal latch clicking echoed in the quiet. Every person watching held their breath. Max stood up slowly, his legs still trembling, and stepped inside the enclosure. No fear, no hesitation, just quiet determination. He walked gently across the dirt floor, past the water trough, past the scattered hay, until he reached the lion lying motionless on the ground. And then, with the tenderness of a mother caring for her child, Max lowered his head and licked the lion's forehead. The lion flinched, its eyes widened, and then, slowly, as if waking from a long, painful dream, the lion lifted its massive head and rested it gently against Max's side. Nobody said a word. The air felt sacred, untouchable. A senior caretaker, standing near the fence, wiped a tear from his weathered cheek. "I've worked here for 25 years, and I've never seen anything like this." From that day forward, Max was allowed to visit. Every morning, Harold would drive him to the sanctuary, and Max would walk into the enclosure like it was home. He'd lie next to the lion, and the lion, weak but alive, would lift its head, eyes searching, always searching, until they found Max, like family, reunited after a lifetime apart. The bond between them was undeniable. The sanctuary staff began documenting their interactions. Researchers came from universities to observe. News outlets picked up the story. But for Harold and Max, none of that mattered. What mattered was that Max had found his friend again. One stormy night in late summer, a power outage triggered an emergency lockdown across the sanctuary. Backup generators failed. The lion's cage sealed shut automatically, trapping the animal inside. And then, without warning, the lion collapsed. Seizures racked its body. Its breathing became shallow and erratic.
But Max, who had been staying overnight in a visitor's hallway nearby, sensed something was wrong. He ran to Harold's cabin a quarter-mile away and barked frantically, pawing at the door until Harold woke up in a panic. Max wouldn't stop. He kept running back toward the sanctuary, looking over his shoulder, urging Harold to follow. Harold grabbed his coat and ran. When they arrived, the rescue team was already trying to force open the sealed gate. Max led them directly to the lion's enclosure. The team worked quickly, breaking the lock, rushing inside with medical equipment. The veterinarian on call said it plainly. Had you arrived 5 minutes later, the lion wouldn't have made it. Max saved his life.
Months later, the lion fully recovered. His strength returned. His mane grew thick and golden again. And when the sanctuary deemed him healthy enough, they released him into the open wild section, a sprawling 50-acre habitat where he could roam freely. But every month, without fail, Max would still come to visit. And every time, the moment they saw each other across the tall grass, the lion would crouch low, tail swaying gently, eyes bright with recognition. Max would walk up slowly, press his head into the lion's chest, and the lion, this powerful king of beasts, would close his eyes and breathe peacefully. They didn't need words. They had each other. Some bonds go beyond species. Some cries are echoes of memories never forgotten. And some dogs, like Max, only need one act of love to stay loyal for life. But if you think this story is the most touching one yet, you haven't seen the dog buried alive, and what the bear did next shocked the world. Don't miss the video right beside this one and see why millions cried for one brave little soul.